Hello again everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's a big day. It's kind of like a holiday in the Linux community when your favorite distribution, or one of your favorite distributions in my case, releases a new version. And today is especially important because the latest version of Ubuntu is not only out, today's release of Ubuntu 20.04 is an LTS or long-term supported release. So this is a bigger deal than normal when it comes to Ubuntu releases. And we're going to go ahead and check it out in this video right here, right now. Now, before we get started, I just want to address the elephant in the room if you didn't see my other video. Yes, this is a new studio I'm recording from. Now, nothing is final yet. The audio, the video, the lighting, the layout of everything. I wasn't actually going to record in this setup yet, but I just couldn't wait. I wanted to give it a shot. And then we'll see how the video and audio quality is if I need to make any adjustments. But go ahead and pardon any technical difficulties in this video. I hope it turns out good. I guess we'll go ahead and see when we get this uploaded. But for right now, let's go ahead and dive into Ubuntu 20.04. I'm really excited to check this out. So here it is, installed on my ThinkPad T480S. No particular reason I chose this one. It's just the laptop I had closest to me when I decided to do this. Actually, I've already been playing around with this, so I'm not new to having this installed on this laptop, but I did go ahead and wipe it and reload it because I've been using Ubuntu 20.04 during the beta phase up until now, running some various experiments. I actually went ahead and installed the System76 Pop! OS Tiling Window Manager extension on 20.04 in a previous video. So that was actually the first time you saw 20.04 on my channel, but today it's actually out and it's time to check out the final version. And you know what? I have a lot of thoughts. There's a lot to go over here. This is a big release. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but I'm going to mention all the things that I feel are important, or things that I've noticed, or just cool things to look out for, things I like, things I dislike, things like that. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So what you see right here is the default desktop, the default wallpaper. This is a fresh installation, so I didn't make any changes. Now, speaking of the installation, I did go through the installation process in a different video, so I'm not going to show you all of that again here. But basically, when it comes to the installer, it's business as usual. There's nothing really changed, except for there's an advanced features option. That gives you an option to use ZFS, which is considered an experimental feature. ZFS is just awesome, and the integration in 20.04 is actually really good. Even though it's considered experimental, the features are awesome in that it takes snapshots when you do things like install your updates, so that way you have a snapshot to go back to in case something goes wrong with that. I think that's really, really awesome. But again, it's experimental. It's not something that I recommend everybody use, and it does cause your system to use more RAM than it normally would use. So keep that in mind. If you have a memory constrained system, you probably don't want to use ZFS. And if it's a mission critical desktop or laptop, you especially don't want to use ZFS, but it's fun to check it out and see where this actually goes. And you can get your taste of ZFS here. It's not new in 20.04, but the process and integration is much more refined in this release. Now, speaking of performance, I do want to go ahead and talk about that real quick. So I'll go ahead and bring up the system monitor. And you can see that my system has about 24 gigs of RAM. Some of that is going to be reserved, of course. But this is not a slouch of a system. It's an i7 CPU. This is a really good machine. Now, one of the highlights here is that this is going to run faster than it did before. You're going to notice snappier performance. Now, I didn't really notice snappier performance in my case because on this laptop, Ubuntu has always ran very well. I think you'll notice this more on systems that are not an i7 with, 24 gigs of RAM and a SSD or something like that. Now, as I get used to it and use it more now that the final version is out, maybe I will notice a speed increase, but it is fast, it is responsive. And maybe that's something you'll notice when you use it, but for me, it's just as fast as it's always been. I haven't had any complaints for a long time. Now here we can see that about 2.5 gigs of RAM are being used on my machine here. Now again, ZFS does increase the memory usage here, so that's going to be the case. It's going to use more memory than normal, so keep that in mind. I don't have any apps open right now. I don't even have Firefox. We don't have the dot or indicator or whatever it is underneath there. It's not running. And this is basically completely idle other than this system monitor here. And this is what the performance, or I should say resource usage, looks like out of the box, at least with ZFS. Again, it's going to use more memory. Keep that in mind. Now, one thing I want to cover early in the video is the changes that you can expect in Ubuntu software. That's this guy right here, Ubuntu software. That's where you get new software for your installation, is by launching this app right here. And if you're new to Ubuntu, this probably looks like any other app store you've ever seen. You can go ahead and just click the search button if you want to search for an app. Just randomly, I typed Firefox, and you could click on it, and you can go ahead and install it. Now in this case, I probably should have chose something else because, it's already installed here. But there's an install button here. Wait a minute. If it's installed, why do I have the option to install it? I'll explain that in a moment. But basically, you could search for an app, and you can go ahead and install it through this. This is actually Gnome software, but it's going to have some Ubuntu specific customizations here. And the biggest change is the inclusion of snap packages. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I mean. So again, I'll go ahead and search for an application, and I'll search for something that's not currently installed. And in fact, rather than search, I'll just click on Slack right here because that's not installed. Now what's interesting is we have the install button. We can also choose the channel. This is probably going to vary based on application. There's only the latest here, but there might be a beta channel or some other channels. Different developers and maintainers can have different channels for their apps. Now that's kind of weird, right? But if you scroll down here, we can see that the source is snapcraft.io. This is a snap package. This is not a Debian package, which is what Ubuntu normally uses. Now I have seen some reports that Ubuntu has switched to snaps exclusively. That's not true. Let's just understand what this is and what this isn't, so we can have an understanding of what is actually changing here. So if I was to go ahead and search for another application, I'm going to search for, let's say, Frozen Bubble. You shouldn't have to type the whole thing here. Search is kind of slow, not sure why, but I'll click on it. And again, we have the install button. This is a fun game, and I like this game a lot. But basically, we can see that the source right here is not snapcraft.io. It's just the universe repository. So effectively what that means is this is a Debian package. This is coming from apt in the background. You can apt install Frozen Bubble just like you would before. Nobody is taking the apt utility or the Debian packages away from you. Nobody's taking control away from you. It's just that snaps are an inclusion here, but you don't have to use them. And in fact, unlike some other blogs I've read that have claimed that the software store, this app right here, is all snap packages, that's just not true. And we see that right here because it literally shows you the source. It's the universe repository, which is one of the popular default repositories on Ubuntu. If you've used Ubuntu for a while, you know exactly what that means. But this is a Debian package. It's not any different than any other version of Ubuntu. If you were installing Frozen Bubble 10 years ago, you're using the same command in the background to install it as you are here. That hasn't changed. But snap packages are an inclusion, a value add, an additional thing. Now, it's seamless because if I was to click on Slack again, if you're just glancing at this, you wouldn't know the difference. You have an install button. It's going to install an application. If you're a beginner and you just want the app installed, you probably don't care where it comes from as long as it works, as long as it's supported. That's fine. But the technical people among us are going to want to know where it comes from, and this is a snap package. Either way, the result is the same. You click the install button, which, I'll go ahead and do that right now. and I'll put in my password. We should have the app in the menu just like we would any other non-Snap application. So here we are installing Slack. I'll go ahead and let it finish. We'll get back to the video in just a moment. But real quick, I want to mention my sponsor, Linode, who actually has Ubuntu 20.04 available on their platform already today if you want to go ahead and check out the latest version of Ubuntu on your VPS. And in addition to having Ubuntu on day one, there's never been a better time to check out Linode because also they are giving every account object storage for free until May 31st, 2020. So whether you've created your account way back in 2003 or just today, you can take advantage of object storage until May 31st. Now, what is object storage, you might ask? Well, basically, it's an easy way for you to store and access data without the need of a running server, and it's perfect for static files that don't change regularly, such as images, important backups, giant archives, and so on. And one of the best use cases for object storage is hosting a static website. In fact, you can have a site up and running and highly available on Linode's platform with as little as an HTML and CSS file. To give object storage a try for free or to spin up your very own Ubuntu 20.04 instance and check out the new release, sign up at www.linode.com/learnlinuxtv for $20 in credit towards your new account. Linode has been a sponsor of my channel for a long time now. I really appreciate that. And they've also been my infrastructure provider for a long time as well. So I highly recommend you check them out. And thank you to Linode for sponsoring this video and all the others. I really appreciate it. So let's get back to the Ubuntu 20.04 review. And there you go. Now it's installed. The install button has changed to the remove button to show us that this is something that's installed. In fact, we can also go here to installed, and we get a list of all the apps that have been installed. And by the way, there's a minimal option when you go ahead and install this if you don't want all these default apps. As of the time I'm recording this, Slack is the only thing that I've installed, and I did that just now. So these apps are all default here other than that one. But if I scroll down here, we see Slack is here on the list. So it's easy to remove it if I want to do that. We also have updates right here, which I'll get to in a few moments. But removing apps is just as easy as installing them. And overall, I think that this app is great for beginners. But getting back to the topic of Snap packages, that's just something, again, that's a value add. It's additional. It's a benefit. You don't have to use it. Nobody's forcing your arm behind your back and making you use this. It's just something that you can use. And is it going to be the future? Well, maybe, but nobody really knows yet because, this is a developing thing, the concept of universal packages, and that's what Snap packages are. That's a form of universal package. There's also flat packs and app images as well that are alternative universal package types. And Snap packages, while created by Canonical, the makers of Ubuntu, are prominent. It's prominent here in Ubuntu, but it's available on other distributions as well. You can install Snap packages on other distros. It's not specific to Ubuntu. But, the question then is, what are Snap packages and why should we care about these? So I'm going to try to distill this down to a quick summary, although I'm not really good at quick summaries, am I? But basically, when it comes to Snap packages, it's trying to solve a real problem. And there's some people that are very, very against Snap packages. I don't agree with the criticism. I mean, yeah, I guess you could argue a few things about it, but no solution is perfect. But the fix that it's trying to implement here in the Linux ecosystem is really important. So what's the problem then? So when you have a non-rolling release, Ubuntu is a non-rolling distribution. That means that the software repositories that it subscribes to for your updates in your apt packages, basically the standard Linux packages, are locked to very specific versions. They will update certain things for certain reasons. They will give you the latest Firefox, for example. That's an exclusion to that rule that no major new versions of software will be given to you. Everything is locked. And the problem with that is, if you want the latest version of an application, you can't have it. You have to wait for the next version of the distribution, which is just silly to me. This is something that I've always hated about the Linux ecosystem in general. It's kind of like if you're on Windows or Mac OS, you want the latest application X, whatever it is, you just go to the site, you download it, and you install it, you're good to go. But on a lot of Linux distributions, non-rolling Linux distributions, you will not be offered that because all the applications come from one source, which is actually a good thing. It's a curated source, a secure source, but you won't get that new version until the distribution updates because non-rolling distros, well, that's just how they roll, or in this case, don't roll. Now, the problem there is, beginners, they don't understand that. They just want the latest version of their application. Now, the criticism is if you have bleeding edge apps, you lose stability. Ubuntu wants to be a stable distro. Now, my opinion is that you as the user should be able to pick and choose if you need a particular app to be bleeding edge while everything is stable and just locked, and you can make whatever exclusions you need to make for your use case. You don't really have that option, do you? Well, now you do, because snap packages, if a package is available in that format, actually will allow you to have the latest version of an application without affecting the system packages or the stability of the distribution itself. That is huge. And then on servers, for example, you can have a different version of a server app than what's in the repositories, because then on servers, the problem is you install the latest application, then you might get some other updates that basically don't coexist well with other apps on the server. Then your whole stability thing just tumbles at that point. But with snap packages, you can go ahead and have a new version of an application that's going to have minimal impact on the rest of the system. Now, another benefit here is that you have one package for everything. All the dependencies are there, everything it needs is there, and then you can go ahead and have all that done in one shot. Snap packages are a good thing. Are they for everything? Everyone? No. Snap packages are not for everybody. It depends on your use case, but the moral of the story here is that if you really want to benefit from snap packages, then you will be able to do so in 2004, and it takes a very prominent center feature here on Ubuntu software. So I think it's a good thing. It just depends on your opinion, but at least it's an option. Okay, so that explanation was a little bit longer than I intended, but I just want to make sure we understand what snap packages are and what they're not. Now, what's interesting to me, and something that I don't really understand yet because I just noticed it today, is going back to my Firefox example. If I go ahead and search for that and click on it, I get the option to install it, but it's here, isn't it? Well, I'll click on it. Okay, it's definitely here. It works. So Firefox is installed. So then technically I would think this should say remove, right? Well, interesting is the fact, if I scroll down here, it's a snap package. I'm being offered a snap package of Firefox in this entry right here. When I search for Firefox, that's what came up. But that's not what's installed by default. So let's see what that actually looks like here. I'm going to go ahead and open a terminal. Make the font size big so it shows up for you guys, especially those of you that are watching this on a mobile device. If I was to run this command, so I'll get selections, and there's probably an easier way to do this, but this will work fine. And I'm going to grep for Firefox. And this is going to show me, basically distribution packages, Debian packages that are installed. And I'm just grepping for Firefox specifically. We can see Firefox is installed. Whoops. We can see that Firefox is installed here. And this basically shows me that it is the Debian package that's installed by default. And a better way to know that is I could simply do snap, which is the command for snap packages. You can manage these over the command line as well. Snap list. And maybe I have the font size a bit too large here. So it shows me the snap packages that I have installed. The only one I really have installed is Slack. That's the one that I installed. The Snap Store itself is a snap package. Snapd is the underlying package or part of the underlying architecture of that. We have common themes for visual stuff. So we have components of Snap. The only actual app other than software is Slack. So I guess you could say the only snap package that comes with Ubuntu 20.04 by default is this one right here. That's the only one installed. Firefox is not among them. So I find it interesting then that they didn't go ahead and install the Firefox version or the snap version of Firefox, given that that's what they're offering in the menu. That's a little weird. Developing, maybe I'll figure that out off camera, but I just wanted to mention that. So let me clean my screen here a little bit. So anyway, that's basically the biggest change when it comes to the Ubuntu software. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main page here. And let's talk about updates. Now, this was actually failing off camera. I was looking up something. I actually just wanted to see if I had a firmware update. I clicked on the Updates tab. Let's see if it still crashes. And it does. So basically, you're supposed to be able to go ahead and, use this utility for installing updates. I'm not able to do that for some reason. I don't know why yet. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and let that go. I think that's kind of embarrassing on release day, but this is release day. There could be a day one update that's going to fix this. I just wanted to let you guys know that's a problem as of the time I'm recording this video. I'm not able to install updates through this, but then again, hopefully that's not a problem for you. But that's where you would normally go to install your updates. Is you would go here to that tab, you would click on that, you run your updates. If you're using ZFS, it'll create a snapshot, which is awesome. So if you have a problem, you can go ahead and revert those changes. And going over ZFS is beyond the scope of this video, and I'm not sure if it's something I'm going to cover yet. Considering it's experimental, I don't want to make too many of you guys want to use it because, if there's any bugs, I don't want it to be my fault, but you get the idea. So now let's talk about the overall look and feel. I mean, you've seen some of it already. This doesn't look like your standard GNOME distribution. If you already know what that looks like, if you're new to Linux, then this is probably your only vision into what GNOME looks like. GNOME itself, which is the desktop environment here, that Ubuntu uses by default, is not specific to Ubuntu. It's on other distributions as well. It's a very popular desktop environment, and they have made a lot of customizations here. Like this panel here on the left, that is not a standard GNOME feature. That is not something you normally get with GNOME. And that's something that Ubuntu gives you. This is known as an extension. So normally you don't have this. And the theme, in my opinion, no offense to the GNOME developers, it just doesn't look good. I mean, the Ubuntu theme I think looks great. The GNOME default theme, which you're not seeing here, does not look so good. Let me see if I can go ahead and revert to the old theme here. So I'll just go ahead and open up Settings. And then Appearance. And I'm just reminded that the theme settings aren't in GNOME settings by default. I'll get back to that. But one of the things here is we have a light, standard, and a dark theme that we can choose between. And with the file manager here, we can see the new icon theme, and you can see like the color gradients, the window border, and the changes that they have made, which are great changes. And I think that they are necessary changes. It looks really professional. Now on the Appearance tab, we get some additional control here though, because we can go to a completely dark theme. I really like that actually, by the way. We even have a light theme if we want to go the opposite direction. The standard is kind of like a cross between the two. We have a dark window border, but the light contents inside the windows here are light. So we can customize that. The panel can be customized here. Icon size is 48 by default, so we can kind of shrink that down, and you can see how the panel is growing and shrinking. So we get some customization here. We could change the position, so I could put it on the bottom. So for you, those of you coming from Windows, for example, this will probably make you feel more at home. But I'm going to go ahead and put mine back on the left. That's where I prefer mine. And what I like to turn on is this option here for auto hide. And you can see that nothing happened, right? It's not hiding. What that actually refers to is it's more of an intelligent hide. If I get a window close, see that? It gets it out of the way. So that just ensures that the panel isn't stealing screen real estate from you. It gets out of the way if it needs to. If I go ahead and maximize this, the menu's gone. I can get it back pretty easily just by going over here to the edge, but it's going to get out of the way. I really like that option. I normally do have that turned on. That's a good option to have. So anyway, back to the default theme that you normally get with GNOME for comparison. Now off camera, I've installed Gnome Tweak. It's an app that you can use that's actually going to give you additional control options that aren't normally available. And then I can go to Appearance here, and then we have Themes. So if I expand this, we have Adwaita, which says Default. And then for the icons, I'll go ahead and change that to default as well. Which actually, that's not the default icon theme, so I'll go ahead and just change that to something else. So ignore the icon theme, but you basically get the idea. Everything other than the icon theme here is the default GNOME theme, and I think you can get an idea for how much better Ubuntu's theme is, in my opinion, of course. That just depends on you, what you prefer here. But I think even if you don't like it, I think it's pretty clear that they do a better job. And with this plain theme that looks like something out of 2004 or something, I think that is pretty necessary to customize it a little bit. So I'll go ahead and change it back. And now we're back to the default, so you can kind of see the difference. So I think that the theme changes and appearance changes that they have done here are great. And there's polish all the way from the boot screen all the way to this point. I mean, there always was a boot screen here. However, they've even integrated the file system checker in a great way. It's just works better, I guess I want to say, because the boot splash for me doesn't always appear in previous versions, but so far I've seen it every time. I still need to test this on other video cards, but so far it works better. They've put polish pretty much everywhere. I think that's great because the attention to detail really shows in Ubuntu 20.04, and I think that's great because, again, this is a long-term or LTS release. And what does that mean? Well, that just means that it's supported for a much longer period of time, up to 5 years, whereas the other versions of Ubuntu, the non-LTS versions, are supported for just 9 months. So Ubuntu 20.04 is a very important release. So let's talk about some of the other features in no particular order. This is using GNOME 3.36. So what that means is you'll benefit automatically from any feature that the GNOME developers have put into GNOME. For example, the default lock screen. So I'm going to go ahead and try to make that appear here. I'll click lock. So basically, it's a new lock screen. You're going to have some notifications down in this area here. So it doesn't look like the most amazing lock screen you've ever seen. I think they've made some good improvements here. It looks more professional. It's hard to pin down exactly why. There's no huge changes, but I think it just looks more modern. I guess that's a good way I could put it. So they do have a new lock screen, so there's that. I've also shown you dark mode and being able to select between them, which is a new feature as well. Now, another feature I really like, especially for me, being as, I record videos here. If I click up here, and this is where you get your notifications, we have a Do Not Disturb button right here, which is great because if I'm recording a video on my laptop and then all of a sudden up comes an email alert while I'm talking and I just have to re-record a certain section, that's not fun. So this will hide your alerts and things like that and not have them be visible, which I think is a good thing for people like me that create content. And maybe if you're in a meeting or you're sharing your screen or something like that, and let's face it, a lot of us are doing remote meetings right now, I think Do Not Disturb is a great option to have. In the past, that did exist in Pop! OS, and it was an extension that they included, but now it's built into GNOME, so everybody gets that, including Ubuntu by default, which is pretty cool. Another option we have, if I go to Settings, and then Displays, we have this checkbox right here. But this gives you fractional scaling, which isn't necessarily new. We had this in Wayland, another display server. By default in X, we didn't have this. This basically means that you can have fractional scaling support. And the reason why that's important is if you have one of those super awesome monitors with a big screen, everything's going to look really small. So you can bump everything up to 200% to make everything look larger, but then it's going to look too large. Kind of, it's going to defeat the purpose slightly, or maybe more than slightly, of having such a display because everything's going to be too big. But you can enable this option here, and then you can go in between 200 and 100 and then go ahead and have things just the way you like that. Doesn't affect me because, again, I don't have a display like that. I hope to own one pretty soon if things go well, but if you have one, then I think this will benefit you. And I'm glad this landed in LTS because we really do need this feature, and I'm really happy to see that here because as the time goes on, more and more people are going to have high DPI displays, and I think that we're in a transition period right now, so this came at the perfect time for that. Now, one thing that I think is really cool here is basically a new app that was not included before. I don't even think it existed before. If I search for extensions, here it is. We have a dedicated app to handle our Gnome extensions. We previously needed to install the Gnome Tweak tool to get this, but we don't need to do that anymore. It's installed by default. We can even turn off all the extensions here if we'd like. And we can see some extensions are included by default. Desktop icons, you normally don't have desktop icons anymore in Gnome. A lot of people were angry when they removed that feature, but I guess everyone needs to understand, the Gnome developers can only do so much. They're stretched really, really thin. And, something had to be sacrificed so that they can, keep up with everything. And there's just nobody who raised their hand to maintain that feature, but there was an extension created for that, so you could still do desktop icons. That's how we have them here. We have Ubuntu app indicators. Of course, we have the Ubuntu dock, so I could turn that off, and it's gone. So now we don't have a dock anymore. We can easily enable or disable the dock, which is pretty cool. So I'm glad we have a dedicated app for extensions now. I think that was long, long overdue. Now there's another option I can't show you, but I am excited about this. If I was going to search for any app, I'm just going to randomly choose Firefox again, I guess. But here you could go ahead and right-click on it, and you should have an option if you have a compatible system to launch the app on a dedicated GPU. So if you have a multi-GPU system, and for example, you want to run a game, but you want the game to run on the dedicated video card, which of course you probably do want that, you should have an option to facilitate that right here. Now, I only have one GPU on this laptop, so I don't have the ability to do that right now, but I just want to basically let you guys know you can, in the new version of GNOME, control exactly where or what GPU your apps run on, which is awesome. Again, long overdue. We really needed that. I'm glad that's here. And another thing that is also available is WireGuard support, which is amazing. Now, the problem is if you go ahead and go to Settings and then Network, and you want to set up VPN, you don't have an option for WireGuard. Now, I want to make sure you guys understand WireGuard is a possibility. It's not here by default. You can use it if you'd like. It's basically, I guess the simplest way I could put it is a replacement for OpenVPN. It's more complicated than that, but it's a great thing for remote access. Glad it's here. And it's just not here by default. So what you actually have to do, and I'll bring the terminal back, and let me go ahead and clear this. We should be able to do apt search, and then I'll search for WireGuard. And then we have WireGuard DKMS right here. So we can install this if we would like support for WireGuard. And some of you definitely want to look into this, especially those of you that work remote, which a lot of us are doing. It's a great way of doing that. It's a great thing to have. So I'm really happy to see that here. And it's supported. So if you have WireGuard capability on your network and you want to hook into that, then you can go ahead and install this. I think that's awesome. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and rebooted the laptop. I just want to see if the software store here is actually going to work for updates now. Let's see. Nope. Okay, so I guess that was worth a shot. I didn't know if maybe there was something in the background that needed to be updated or some kind of inconsistency. So I guess we'll go ahead and let that go. But that's kind of really disappointing, to be honest, to have that particular problem on release day, but I'm sure they'll get it fixed. So hopefully by the time you're installing Ubuntu and testing this out, it's probably already fixed for you. So anyway, a quick look at the default applications, and I'll give you guys my final opinion on 2004. I mean, obviously you already know Firefox is the default web browser, as it has been for some time. Same with Thunderbird, which also has the Lightning extension built in, by the way. We, of course, have Rhythmbox. We've had that forever. And it's kind of interesting to see that here because, so many people are moving to, streaming media services like Spotify. I'm actually happy to see this because I do have a collection of MP3s and physical CDs and things. I'm a bit old school there, so it works for me, but I think I'm part of a dying breed here. So it's kind of surprising that they still include that. LibreOffice, that's a great Office suite. I've written all 4 of my books with this, so I do like this quite a bit, and I'm glad to see that's the default still. 6.4 is the major version here that we're at as of the time I'm recording the video here, so just so you know. Of course, have help, and I've already gone over Ubuntu software. Now, other apps we have installed here, if I go to all, and I did not choose the minimal option when I installed this. So we've gone over LibreOffice. There's several different apps in that suite. We have Remina, which is here by default. I'm glad to see that because this is a remote desktop app and you can do more. Whoops, let me get this out of the way here. You could do more than RDP. You could VNC, SSH, basically remote connections. That's awesome. Glad to see that's here. I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from that. We get a webcam app, Shotwell for photography, Slack, I installed that, so that's not here by default. And then going from here, we have, let's see what else. We have transmission for the legal BitTorrent downloads that you plan on downloading. Gnome videos. So that's pretty interesting. And that's for playing videos, as the name would imply. And this is cool. We have Gnome To Do by default. And I think that's great. We have a to-do list manager here. That's awesome. Something I'll probably end up using quite a bit for myself and my own purposes here. So we have a pretty reasonable set of default applications. We have some games, which, that's probably not something I'll benefit from. But, I guess if you want to play some mahjong or something in between tasks, there's that. And, there's your default apps. There's some other ones here. I'm not going to go over all of them, but pretty much the same as before. It's just everything is at the latest version as of the time that I'm recording this, or at least as of the time Ubuntu 24 comes out. It's updated all the apps, the Linux kernel, the latest versions of GNOME and its related software. It's basically a great set of default applications. I think that's awesome. So there you go. That was my review on Ubuntu 20.04. Now, I didn't cover every single little new feature because there's a lot of new things here to cover. I covered some of my favorite things, some of the things I'm most excited about. But overall, what we have here is a stable, solid experience. The only problem I've ever had with this, and I've been using it since beta, has been my inability to click on the Updates button. Now, I'm sure they'll get that fixed. I hope they do pretty soon. So that's a little concerning to me. But you know what? It is release day, so I'm sure they're still kind of working some things out. And people generally wait a week to upgrade to these things anyway. But other than that one problem, I've experienced this as being a fast, awesome desktop. It's modern, great attention to detail. It has ZFS support. Well, I should say ZFS is integrated. Not supported, it's experimental, but it's here and it's getting better and better, so that's exciting to see. The feature where you can direct the app to run on a specific video card is exciting. I think that we have a very, very solid desktop here. I highly recommend you guys test this out, see if it works on your machine, and let me know what you think when you have a chance to check this out. But this is a long-term supported release. I think we're in a very, very good place here because Ubuntu 20.04 is just proving itself to be probably the best version of Ubuntu ever. And aside from that one update issue, I mean, it's just been a solid experience even during beta. And usually during beta, it's rocky, things crash and there's problems, but I didn't even have problems in beta. So I think that's telling that this is a very stable experience. And I think it's a great choice for the desktop. Definitely something that I think you'll be able to benefit from for the long term. Get it? Long-term support. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you had a chance to check this out yet, what do you think of Ubuntu 20.04? If you like this video, please click that like button. That lets YouTube know you want to see more Linux content just like this. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and I will see you in the next video.